Good afternoon and welcome to another seminar for the afternoon. And today we have Nicolina Andall who will be presenting. She is a solicitor and the daughter of the late Sister Toiloy. And the title of her presentation is Legal Considerations and Caring for Our Elderly Loved Ones. And she will be sharing her experiences of supporting her mum through her illness and her state after her passing. But before we go any further, let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear, kind, and eternal Heavenly Father, glory and honor to your high and holy name. We thank you for the blessing of the Sabbath day that has passed, and as we now go into this seminar presentation, we pray, O God, that your presence will still be with us and with our online viewers, and that as we learn, we may be able to put the information into practice. Please be with the presenter, and we thank you, Father, for this day, for we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. It's lovely to be here. Today, I'm going to be presenting, telling you a bit about my journey with my mom, the late Mrs. Sister Toiloy, who died last year. She was a long-standing member of Croydon Church. And for all of you Croydon members, I'm sure you all remember her very clearly in your minds and in your heart. So, I know today that talking about getting older, mental health, and passing away, these are sensitive issues. I understand that. And I'm not here to hurt anyone with anything I may say, but it's something that we need to be alive to. Life is unexpected, and God wants us to be wise. I was reading today, Proverbs 9:9, give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. And I know that we have many wise and just people in this, my wonderful church community. And I just want to raise your awareness of the things that I've learned on my journey. To be open, I am a qualified solicitor, but I really do not practice this area of law, really. I really don't. So I do recommend that you consult an expert, and please consider everything here is for guidance purposes only. This is going to be the structure of my presentation today. I'll take you through some happy memories so you can get a feeling for the kind of person she was. We're going to talk about wills, and there'll be a break after that to take a few Q&A. We're then going to talk about lasting powers of attorney and talking about support. There'll be another Q&A break, and then we'll end on probate and administration, and there'll be another Q&A break at the end. So, without further ado, this is my mom. She's beautiful. This was actually taken in the year before she died, and she's with my youngest son, Theo, who was 11. Can you believe it? 11 at the time. So it will give you an idea about just how sweet and cute she was. My mom came over like many of our older generation, Windrush. She came over, she was proud, she was educated. She had huge hopes and dreams for the future. She was an independent woman. She knew exactly what she wanted. She knew exactly how she was going to get it. She got married to my wonderful father, Patrick, in the 60s, and they were married until she passed away. She was a nurse, really proud. This is her in her nurse's uniform. She loved nursing. Oh my gosh, she loved nursing. It was a true vocation for her. She loved flowers. She loved her garden. She loved her home. And she had a big fat baby. Yeah, that's me. Okay, hands up, that's me. Many of you will laugh. Those of you who know her or who knew her will know that she talked about me a lot. She had 3 pregnancies. I was the only one that she managed to hold to term. And I know, the center of her life, I know. And these are just a few pictures, when I was admitted to the Law Society as a solicitor, when I got married. And she was a really, really proud grandmother, and she was always picking the kids up from school. And she was wonderful. She was a huge part of my life, and I was a huge part of hers. And most of all, she was my mom and dad. They were intrepid explorers. This was a picture of their last whirlwind tour. I think it was, they went to Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam, and this was 2 years before she died. She was totally out there. In total, they visited over 40 countries during their marriage. And most of all, Mom was really big in the church. She joined the church. It was her life. ADRA, Pathfinders, singing, praising, being a teacher, everything. Everyone will know her from Croydon Church. You all know her. You even know where she's sitting, where this picture was taken. Thank you, Bobby, so much for sharing this. So in about 2012, Mom had a really bad fall and she wasn't well. She was off her feet for quite a long time. And my dad said, let's move house. And they bought a bungalow in the area. And after we did lots and lots of movement of money and we bought this property, we decided that we would actually go as a family and update our wills. So we did that in 2015. So this moves me into the first part of my presentation, which is about wills. Every adult should have a will. Every adult. It's not just for older people. It's for us as well. It doesn't matter how old you are. I've had many in my life. And at the end of the day, it is just setting out very clearly that it's your last will. This is what I want done after I pass away. And a simple will is a very, very powerful document. It sets out your wishes. If you have children, you can specify who will look after your children if they're under 18 and you should pass away. No one knows the day nor the hour. And certainly when we're at law school, we're always taught to consider the family car and they're out. The family are out, there's an accident. What happens if both the parents in the front die and the kids live? What happens if everybody dies? And that's kind of the approach that we take. It's a very practical thing that we do. So the great thing is you can specify guardians for children under 18. You can specify executors, people who will actually administer your estate after you've passed away. And importantly, and this is something that I didn't realize until I became an executor about 3 years ago for my late uncle, that piece of paper is so powerful because it gives executors the power to act. That's where the power comes from. Really, really important piece of paper. And also, it allows you to plan the tax around it. I've got an article that I'll talk about later, but you can do a lot of really powerful tax planning if you have a will and you take some good advice. Finally, I will always recommend, being a solicitor, I will always recommend that you use a solicitor or you use another qualified professional to help you through this law. It's a very legal area and there's a lot of powerful things that you can do if you actually do a good will. So I really, really recommend that. Few points. A simple will should name your executors. Have more than one because you don't really want, maybe one passes away. You'll want one, maybe two or three. I'm one of three for my late uncle's estate. And importantly, you can really set out what you want to happen to you after you've passed. And for some people, they go, oh my gosh, you want me dead? You want me dead? You want to talk about that? No. This is about what your wishes and what you want to do. And I really am proud of my mom because she was clear on this from years ago. She set out, when I die, Nikki, this is what I want to happen. I want a simple burial. I want a simple service. This is how I want to be dressed. I want tights on. I want a handbag in my coffin because I want to look good when I turn up. And she was really specific. She even wrote key points for her eulogy many, many, many years ago. And she was just really open and honest about it. And a long time I used to go, oh, Mom, stop talking about these things. Stop it. But you know what? I'm so glad that she did because I knew that I could support her properly when the time came and she knew she could trust me to do that. It allows you to deal with all of your belongings. And it's really important that you say what you want done with your house, your car, and this important thing called residue. The residue is kind of what's left over after you've specifically named specific property. And it's important you provide for that. It's just a little catch-all. Just remember that when you put your will together. In order for it to be valid, you must have mental capacity, it must be signed, and it must be dated. And it must be done in front of two independent witnesses to prevent there being any issues around undue influence. However, you must tread carefully. Here are a few considerations. First, choose your executor with care. Don't just choose a random, long-lost relative who you haven't heard of and you're putting them down just because they're a relative. No. Are they trustworthy? Will they do the job? Executors can renounce their position. Will they do their job? Will they take due care and attention over what they're doing? Will they do it properly? And when you choose them, really think, how do they run their lives? Do I trust this person? International considerations are huge. Issues around where is your home? Are you domiciled in the UK or are you domiciled abroad? What laws are going to have impact in respect of your estate after you pass away? How will it be taxed? Under whose laws? Under the estate that I'm dealing with now for my late uncle, 3 years now, 3 years. There's a small piece of property out in Jamaica. And because of that, we've had to get notaries involved. I have a UK lawyer dealing with a Jamaican lawyer. It took 18 months to reseal the grant of probate abroad. And then when the title deeds went missing, we had to do a lot more work. So the international considerations, it does complicate things. Luckily, we have a very, very good Caribbean lawyers in Croydon. They're actually in Addiscombe, Caribbean Legal Services, and they're really good. They're not solicitors, but I can honestly say that without Evita Simmons, life would be so much harder. This is an interesting one. Dependents can claim if there is inadequate provision made under the will. This is good law, the Inheritance Provision for Family and Dependents Act 1975. And if you're thinking that you can just cut people out your will, the law will step in and say that people need to be kept in the style to which they've become accustomed during their life. So just be mindful of that. And finally, be aware that life events can nullify a will. Marriage nullifies a will. Divorce nullifies a will. And if you have children, that can have a massive impact on the way how a will is read. So be careful also to cover the whole estate. So if you don't, then some of it will be go under the will and some will go outside of the will. Try, and this is why I say it's important to get professional advice on this. Try and cover all of it. And what happens if you die with no will? Too often I hear in our community, unfortunately, that people say, oh, you can all fight about it after I'm dead. That is not a kind thing to do for your loved ones. This is called dying intestate or intestacy. It makes it much harder to deal with your estate, particularly at the beginning, to get the legal rights to actually deal in it. If you do, the person who does have to apply to the court needs to apply for grant of letters of administration. So it's similar to a grant of probate, which you would get if you have a will. It's just trickier to do right at the beginning. And there is a very clear number of people, number of layers that you need to clear off before you can say, yeah, I'm entitled to apply for this. And again, everything is shared, unfortunately, not according to your wishes, but according to the law of England. I'm a solicitor, but even I'm a bit worried about the law of England sometimes. So think about it. There is a myth that the spouse gets it all. The spouse does not get it all. So this is not a good state of affairs. It is generous to a spouse, but they do not get it all. Don't take that for granted. And finally, with no will, you cannot make the most of the inheritance tax savings that you could otherwise get if you do. Just take some simple advice. So, questions?
Well, we don't have any questions at this time, so you may continue.
Thank you very much. So, we did our wills many years ago and everything was fine. And everything continues to be fine. Mum got older, she got a bit slower. And it starts with the small things. You know, they forget things, their words aren't quite so straight anymore. You know, they need a bit more help with their banking. And I have to admit it was helping because everything's getting digital. Mum really needed a bit of help with her banking. As time went on, it got worse and she was admitted to hospital. It was in the really, really hot summer. And she got admitted to hospital. She was a diabetic. And it was a really crazy day. The doctor called me. Remember, I got a lasting power of attorney. The doctor called me and he goes, "You need to find your mom because she's not right. Her blood sugar level was 32." 32. He said he looked at her and said, "You shouldn't be walking." And so we found her, made sure she was okay. We had to give her lots of water. She drank too much water. She didn't know how much was the right amount to drink, ended up in hospital that night. And that was the beginning of 3 weeks in hospital. And during that time, she complained bitterly that her new pharmacist, who wasn't new, hadn't shown her how to use her insulin properly. So she wasn't taking her insulin. And I remember going to the pharmacy that day because I wanted to have a chat with him. And I was standing by one of those old racks with all these leaflets in it. And I remember one saying, "Noticed any mental changes?" And I picked it up and I read it. And that was my mom. And it said, "You better check her for dementia." And it was early stage. It was very early stage. But yeah, she had just forgotten how to take her medication and she didn't tell anyone. It was so sad. But at least we found out. Dementia is a really serious disease and it can affect anybody from even an early age in our 40s and 50s. And it slowly takes somebody away from you, from their latest memories, going back to their earlier memories. And it can really affect them really badly. Dementia and mental health issues are absolutely no fun. People might think that, hey, it's okay, I'm next of kin, it's not a problem, we can go everywhere and, people will listen to me. Being next of kin may account for absolutely nothing. Particularly banks, they're not interested. Everyone heard about GDPR, General Data Protection Act, regulations, data protection. Even before that, in a health context, it's called patient confidentiality. In a life context, it might be client confidentiality. There are a billion reasons why institutions will not talk to you. So just bear that in mind. And when it comes down to care, social health and care, even though there's huge amounts of safeguarding, if a medical professional or a care home or someone thinks that somebody can't look after themselves, they can override the next of kin's wishes. And they can actually take it to a stage, it's a very extreme stage, where they can actually deprive the individual of their liberty. So having a power of attorney allows you to stand in someone's shoes and you speak on their behalf, and legally, they will notice you. Everybody, the law must recognize you and you must be dealt with. So looking at lasting powers of attorney, here are some general points. It can only be granted by an adult of sound mind, and they're called a donor. So if they're already exhibiting real problems with their mental health, it can be difficult. Well, it's impossible to get an LPA. You can get something else like guardianship or deputyship, but it's much harder to get because they're not an adult of sound mind. A lasting power of attorney gives another individual, called an attorney, legal rights to deal in their affairs until death or revocation. It's a very flexible document, and if the individual is concerned about people stepping in and doing something untoward, I believe that they can provide that it only kicks in once their mental capacity is gone. It's a very flexible document. There are two types of lasting power of attorney, and both of them stand very firm if the donor loses mental capacity. So, where can I get one? And as with anything, this area is a very legal area. You do need to apply to the Court of Protection. There are a number of ways you can do this. You can, if you want the help of a qualified individual, of course, a solicitor will help you, or there are other qualified professionals who can do it, but you can get one through a website. This is the website. You can go, it's all there. The government websites have got a lot of information. And you can apply for it online, or I do recommend you do it online because it just walks you through the process. And then you get the documents, you print it out, and then you will need an independent certifier to explain the meaning of the documents to the donor. This is the website which is correct. I've checked it. If you're paying for it, if everyone has got normal funds and fees, this will cost about £80 if you do it via the website. If the donor is in receipt of things like pension credits or tax credits, I believe you can actually get it for much less than that, maybe even free. If you use a qualified individual like a solicitor or otherwise, you might be looking at anything between £500, £600 and £1,000 per document, or actually together. It depends. Anything I've heard of, maybe £1,000, £2,000. I think there are instances when it's right to have that level of distance. So you can demonstrate to everybody that, you've gone to a solicitor, they've been taken aside, there's no undue influence. So I think there's a time and a presence for it. But if you've got, family or people that you know who can be the independent certifier, you can get one of these documents for under £100. Very, very good thing to do. It takes about, I think, 10 to 12 weeks to come through once you've returned all the documents. So there are two types of power of attorney. The first is property and finance, and it gives the attorney the right to make decisions about money and property. It helps you manage a bank account. It helps you pay their bills. It helps you collect benefits or pensions, and it can even help you sell their home. That might become necessary if you need to move them, or maybe you just want to move them into your home and they don't need the house anymore. So it's a really, really powerful document. You should note that every organization has a different way of recognizing attorneys. So register quickly with each one. Some of them, particularly the banks, they're the sticklers. It could just be you walk in with your ID, the documents, and they'll take a photocopy, write down some details. If it's like Barclays, you're sitting there for an hour and a half of your life. So I'm glad they do the proper safeguards and jump through the right hoops. It's very important that they do that. But it does take time to lodge it with everybody. The second type of lasting power of attorney is for health and welfare. And this one I found really helpful, particularly with doctors, nurses, hospitals. The attorney has the right to make decisions about health and welfare, their daily routine, medical care, but most importantly, where they live. Doctors, health professionals, social workers, they have no choice other than to listen to you. Now, obviously, if the donor is still of sound mind, they will, of course, listen to the donor first. But in the event that they cannot do that, they're incapacitated, or there is a concern about their mental health, then they will listen to you. And certainly when we went into hospital, I would literally pack a copy. I had one in the back of my car. I had one packed with mum's belongings. The minute I went to the ward, I just went, look, here it is. Here's my power of attorney. Log it on the system. Talk to me. Yeah, talk to me. And I would always include mum when it was right to include her, when I felt that sometimes she had good days, she had bad days. I would always include her. Just because you're an attorney, it doesn't mean that you cannot include the individual concerned. But there's a time and a place. And certainly with some of the more difficult conversations, I didn't want mum knowing until we were absolutely sure about what was wrong with her. It allows you to sign medical forms on their behalf, even a DNR, a do not resuscitate. And you can make health decisions in the donor's best interest. And I have to admit that in the last few months, we'd be going to the phlebotomist, to get like a blood test. 40 minutes, they're poking her. 40 minutes. And I just said, you know what, stop. Just stop. Enough. This is no more. And then I was so glad that I had that right to be able to just make sure she was treated the way she'd want to be treated. And I did find that at the end, and I have to say thanks so much to the church brothers and sisters who came to see her, and Pastor Alex in particular, who supported her throughout that difficult time. I have to admit that even I was put under a lot of pressure near the end, to give her certain drugs to make her more comfortable. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. Are you saying that she needs it for the pain? And I'll just say, well, okay, come. You go and look at her. Does she look like she's in pain? And they'd come back and go, okay. It's like, exactly, she's not in pain. Has she ever complained that she was in pain? No. So why are you saying that we need to give her all of this stuff? No, 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 no. She's not going to have it. And I let it sit there in that horrible brown box. It was horrible. So I was really glad that I could be really strong for her at the end. Bear in mind also that an attorney's rights fall away on death. So that's the end of it. Don't think that you can carry on having that same kind of legal rights. That's why we're talking about executors having rights and powers under a will. And also get support. This is Mom in hospital. We had the best care, I'd say. This is one of the best nurses. She was lovely. We used to call her Angel of Mercy. Get support for your loved one. When that time comes, you'll know when the time comes. If you can afford a carer, get one. If you can afford a regular cleaner, helper, handyman, provided they'll accept them in the home, do it. Obviously under supervision, but do it. If you're in touch with the church, reach out because you need them. You really need them. Get to know the GPs, the doctors, the district nurses, the pharmacists, everybody. Really get to know them. And it's at that stage that your LPA will really come into its own. And remember that the state can help you. Apply for everything that they are entitled to. And if you're not sure, I didn't know anything about benefits. I never have. I've never claimed. My parents have never claimed, so I didn't know. And I found that the Age UK website was absolutely brilliant. And this is correct. I've checked it. They've got a great benefits calculator, so you can put in all of their details and see what they're entitled to. There's a lot out there where they can get financial help. And here's a brilliant tip. I don't know, everyone might know, I didn't know, but attendance allowance is not means tested. So if your parents have got, your parents, your loved ones have got some money in the bank, you're going, oh, they're not going to be entitled to anything. Attendance allowance is not means tested. Even if they haven't got a care or anything, the mere fact that they need some extra help allows them to be entitled to this extra money. And I did manage to find the best carer, absolute godsend. God sent his guardian angel for my mother. And we found a brilliant carer who treated her like a princess. And that money, the money we got for attendance allowance did go towards paying for the carer that I paid for. And get support for yourself. Be honest with yourself about where you're at and where they're at. Have a grown-up discussion with everybody. Pray. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, get the support where you can. You need support at this time as well. Reach out to your church family. My church family was awesome. I'm so glad they reached in around me. And have a grown-up discussion with your PA, your boss, work, anybody, so they understand what you're going through, because you're not going to be as attentive at work as you might have been before this all happened. Get as much assistance for yourself as possible, and do think ahead. Certainly, I found that Mum died in May, and I found that January, February, Dad was calling me every few days, always at 2:00 in the morning. Come round, Mum's not well. Come round, Mum's not well. And eventually, I just wasn't sleeping. 2:00 in the morning, I'd be thinking, well, what happens when that call comes, and she's not with us anymore? Who am I gonna call? And so I decided to take step. I am an only child, and sorry, I should have said that. I'm an only child, and I decided to take the step of actually going to Rowland Brothers, their local undertakers, and I just needed to know that I had a plan, because when they passed away, they passed on, they're sleeping, they're awaiting the Lord's return. You're the one with the problems. You are the one with the problems. So I reached out to them, and it was the best thing I did, just to say, what do I do? I've never done this before. And they were fantastic with helping me to put things in place so that when the inevitable did come, and it did come, and she did pass away, but I was ready. And I knew who to turn to. I knew who to reach out to. And whilst I was dealing with my grief and the grief of others around me, and keeping them together and holding them together, my kids, my husband, my everybody calls you in Christ to you. When this huge outpouring of emotion happens, I was still on top of the practical day to day. Who do I call? What needs to happen? What paperwork do I need? What needs to be paid? What are we going to do? And I was so grateful that I thought ahead, because it just helped me to keep sane. And Mum did pass away very, very peacefully at home. She wanted to be at home. She wanted to have her cat there, sleeping at the end of the bed, giving her comfort. We were all there with her, and it was lovely. And it's what she wanted. And she had a simple service at Croydon Church, and she was buried, dressed the way she wanted to be dressed, having the funeral service she wanted, with the eulogy that she wrote out, and singing the hymns, even the hymns. She set out the hymns that she wanted. And that was all done in accordance with her wishes as set out in her will. And I'm so proud that she was big enough, proud, sensible enough to put those steps in place for me and for my dad and for our family. Well, this is us. This was her temporary grave, because you need to leave the grave. I learned so much about graves. We need to leave it for over a year to settle. And we've just had the tomb put down, and it's beautiful. And the gilding's been finished now, and it's beautiful. And I know that it's certainly what my dad wanted, and what my mom would have wanted. So maybe this time there's some questions, Pastor.
Yes, there's a number of questions have come through. So some of them dealing with what you mentioned before. The first question, how does inheritance tax affect my estate?
Oh, that's a big question. I will come on to that in the next section. I will talk about inheritance tax.
Okay, then the second question, should you register a will with an authority or just give it to one of the executors?
Right. Okay. So with a will, you don't have to register it anywhere. If you go to a solicitor, there are databases, and they will log it on the database. For me, I have one kept in my personal files. Mum always told me, and we talked about it very openly. So I have a copy. I'm their executive for my mum and dad. I have a copy. And I know what it says. It's very important to bring your executors on the journey, I think, before you write someone's name down. And listen, don't be writing my name down. Do not think about writing my name in your will, because I'm not going to do it. Discuss it with your executors and talk about these things with them. So it's good practice, best practice, to give a copy to your executor. So worst case scenario, they have it.
Thank you. Another question is, what are the things to look for when choosing a good solicitor?
Oh, wow. I'd say go to one by and I've got some resources on this as well. Pick a solicitor who knows what they're talking about. So check online to make sure that they are registered to do this area of work. I would say go to somebody by recommendation if you can find one. I know a few, and at the end of this presentation, I've got a recommended contact. He's not a solicitor, but I know that he is trained in the area of probate and that he's trustworthy. And I do know solicitors who do this area. For me, my mum and dad, we actually just went down to the local high street solicitors who do this area, and I was pretty happy with them. I would say that before you go and see a professional, just write out some things like, who would you want your executor to be? Maybe, what would you want done with your property? Or maybe, who would you want your guardians to be? This is what I want done with my money. I want to leave a bit of money for them. You might want to leave a gift to somebody. Just jot down some ideas before you go.
Thank you. Another question here is, if I have a property in another country, how will that affect my estate?
Oh, it does affect your estate. So I touched on international considerations. So it will be deemed, if you are domiciled here in this country, it will be deemed generally to be part of your worldwide estate, and you are taxed on your worldwide estate. Yeah, that's the basic answer to your question. However, it's a pain to deal with. I really have to say it's a pain to deal with. So I'd say that if you don't need it, simplify your matters. I think as you grow older, simplify your matters. Second properties, things outside your estate. The answer is no. Simplify your estate with all of these things. So, but it is dealt with as part of your estate. So when your estate goes to probate, all of it has to be declared, or all of it should be declared. As a solicitor, I'm always going to say be truthful, because big data these days, things catch up with you. So declare it. Yeah, somebody's going to have to deal with your affairs in the other country. So on top of thinking about how things are dealt with here, you might need to think about how things are dealt with there. I'm aware that there is a thought that sometimes you need different wills for different countries. I am not aware of that certainly for Jamaica, but that might be the case for other jurisdictions. All I can say is you need to speak to your solicitor or your legal advisor about that.
Thank you. Another question here is, can a lasting power of attorney be challenged?
Normally when one is sent out, you can indicate, I believe, on the paperwork that people who need to be notified if a lasting power of attorney is being set out. I think it is possible to challenge a lasting power of attorney, but I don't have experience of that. So I'd recommend that you check the website. The government website on powers of attorney are very, very good. So it's worth checking that. Google it.
Thank you. Another question here is, can I do my own lasting power of attorney?
You will need to have an attorney. In terms of filling in the form, absolutely, you can start filling in the form, but it's important that you deal with it it needs to be signed off by a number of people. The attorney or attorneys will need to sign. The independent certifier will need to sign to say that you understand it. But by all means, the website is there. Go look at it. 100%. You should be. If you are an individual of sound mind, you should be involved with doing your power of attorney. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. The last question so far for this section is, if you do a will by yourself, for example, by a will kit, is it a binding legal document, or does it have to be authorized by a solicitor / independent certifier?
No, it does not. It does not need to be independently. You don't need a legal professional. Even if you just scribble something on one piece of paper, provided it kind of fulfills what it needs to say. So things like, this is my I think this is my last will and testament. It overrules any other wills that may have come before this. And provided it sets out, do make sure it covers your whole estate. The most important thing is that it is signed and witnessed by two unconnected people. That's the important bit. Provided you can tick off those bits, you can do it on your own. You do not need to go to an external person, but because of the tax issues that can arise, because of the few legalities, I do recommend that you do it with the help of someone. But a will kit is fine. That's okay. There are always lots and lots of notes in those will kits, so bear them in mind.
Okay, thank you. There's one more question that has snuck in here. It says, in light of COVID-19 horror stories, can you challenge a hospital's blanket do not resuscitate order if you have a legal power of attorney?
If you have a lasting power of attorney, then you are the person speaking on their behalf. And as I understand it, you are acting on their behalf. So I'd be surprised if they can put a DNR in place. I signed a DNR for my mom when it was absolutely crystal clear that, there's no way this poor little 6-stone thing's ever going to come back. After seeing the way medical intervention can come in, it was like, Mom, it's your time. And I was always very open with Mom. I said, for a long time, I said, Mom, it's not your time. It's not your time. It is not. Don't talk like that, Mom. It's not your time. But you know what? When the time came, I knew. And I signed her DNR. because I wouldn't want it coming back. So a DNR, I signed it under using my power of attorney. So I don't know what hospitals do. Maybe there are medics, we have a lot of medics around who might be able to answer that question. We have them in the church.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to the last part of my presentation. And after they've passed away and you're in the midst of your grief and everything, you got paperwork. This is the government website about applying for probate. All I can say is it is a very legal and tax-driven process. Very legal, very tax-driven. And I've set out here, because it came as a surprise to me, but I've set out here, this is the order they do it in. First, you have to declare everything for tax purposes. Everything. Your property that's here, your property that's abroad, declare everything. Bank account, sort code, how much you've got, all the property, all of it, everything, even down to possessions. You have to declare everything for tax purposes. Second, the executors then need to pay any inheritance tax. You don't have a grant of probate yet. You don't have a legal paper to say you can go down the street and you can spend their money or collect it in or administer. First, you know when they say that there are two things that are definite true in life, death and taxes? This should explain that. You first declare everything and then your executors have to pay the inheritance tax. And until they're happy, you don't get your grant of probate. If you need to sell something to raise the tax, they'll give you a limited grant of probate to permit you to sell it, then come back, pay the money, and then you can carry on. That's the crazy system we have in this country. So declare everything for tax, pay inheritance tax, and then you get the blessed grant of probate, a single sheet of A4 paper that allows you to go out and then administer the estate. So I've got some top tips for your affairs today. Have a valid, up-to-date will. Your executors will thank you. Tell your family where your will is. There's no point having a will if nobody knows where it is. Ensure someone knows your passwords. For my uncle, we still haven't managed to get into various email accounts because we just don't know his password. So particularly for younger people, with everything being so online, someone needs to get into your computer. So I've actually said to I tell my husband and tell my kids, I say, listen, don't go messing around in my business, but if you need to, you know my password, right? Just so they can get access to my digital life. Keep your affairs and your paperwork in good order. And I would say, actually, that if you do have international property, I'll just relay something. My uncle was my mom's favorite brother, and we used to go and see him. And she used to say, "Why are you holding on to that place in Jamaica? What are you doing it for?" And uncle would be like, "Hey, we're going to keep a bit of the homeland in the family." And she's like, "For who?" He goes, "Hey, for our children." And so she'd give me a look. She'd look at my cousin and go, "But them? Them? They're not interested." And so said, so done, after he passed away, the first thing we did was say, "Oh, well, anyone want to buy it? No. Okay, let's sell it." It's the first thing that we did. And yet we still haven't sold it because of the legal process. Keep your affairs and your paperwork in good order, because if someone's going to come and have to go through all the things and administer your estate, they need to know where your things are. So do your filing. Consider making ownership of property and bank accounts, particularly between spouses, joint. There is this concept around survivorship. So let's take a simple example. We have a married couple. They live in a house. Hopefully, the house is in two names. Unfortunately for many, particularly in more traditional families, it's only in the name of one. But try and put it in joint names. And the beauty of that is if you own it as joint tenants, or if you have a joint bank account owned jointly, then on death of one, their share automatically passes legally, automatically to the other. And this is particularly important with bank accounts. When someone passes away, until you have a grant of probate, nobody No bank is going to talk to you about that money. Unless you're a spouse and you're literally crying and saying, oh, I need the money, I need the money, I need the money. They're not going to give you access. So can you imagine the husband has got, or the wife it might be, sorry, I have to be fair. One person is controlling all the money. They pass away. How do you get access to their money? Your mortgage might be being paid through that. The pension might be being paid through that. But if you have a joint account, automatically that money becomes the other person's. So it's a really good protection technique. And do consider doing inheritance tax planning. This is going to answer some of the question beforehand that was raised beforehand. The nil rate band, this is the amount under which there's no tax payable, is only £325,000. It sounds a lot, but for people who actually have property in this country, particularly in London, £325,000 is nothing. And after that, inheritance tax is 40%. Unless you have used inheritance tax planning to, try and shelter things away from the estate so it keeps it out of the taxman's hand, 40%. 40%. I got an article I found in the Financial Times from last year, and it says, inheritance tax is often described as Britain's most hated tax. And one of the comments that came up under the article was, inheritance tax is a wholly voluntary tax. Ask any specialist tax lawyer or accountant. The UK's annual IHT bill is £5 billion. £5 billion. It's one of the main ways in which the government actually raises money, and it tends to only be paid by the middle classes. So please, don't fall into that category where you've worked so hard all your life, to have money that hopefully you can pass on, and then you don't take this seriously because the tax man is sitting there waiting. And remember the order in which you deal with this with probate administration: declare first, pay tax second. Virtually no inheritance tax is paid by the very wealthy in the UK. Top tips for executors. It is a hard, sad, and time-consuming job. It is. You are personally accountable for every step, for everything that you do. I'm one of 3 executors. I'm lead executor for my uncle's estate, but we deal with it very professionally. We have a meeting every week, and we actually keep minutes. Everything is open, everything is transparent. I actually send updates to all the beneficiaries every few months to tell them how we're getting on, and I encourage them that if they want to come and see anything, they're more than welcome. They can come and sit here. I will take them through absolutely everything. I am personally accountable, not just during the period of administration, but afterwards as well. So if you're an executor, just think about it. It's a long, old, hard task, and you are personally liable. Sensitive family issues are going to arise. There will be at least one bus stop, if not more. I know this from experience, at least one. So just be ready for that. So just deal with it professionally as best you can. The Tell Us Once service is great. Once you've registered someone's passing away with the registrar, if you're in the right area, it's not all areas. I think London is covered and patches around the country, but you can get one code and you can use that code, put it into a website, and then just say, they had a driver's license, a passport, and you literally can notify all of the authorities in one fell swoop. Really, really powerful thing that I learned. That was a great service. When you're doing administration, open a separate bank account for probate. The money is not yours as an executor, so it should not be in one of your personal accounts. So what I did with my uncle's estate is the 3 of us opened an account, so it's all open to all 3 of us. We all have access, and we can all see the statements, etc. Everything goes in there, and accordingly, estate expenses also come out there as well. And also from an accountability perspective, if any of the beneficiaries want to see anything, they can always come and see everything. Everything goes through that account. And use professionals. Oh, use professionals. I know you might not want to, but it's a good idea. If it's a simple estate, then do it on your own. And I've got a resource for that. But surveyors, oh, I never even knew how wonderful surveyors were. Don't be cheap and go, oh yeah, they've asked me for a valuation. I'm going to go on to Rightmove and I'll see how much it could sell for. Don't do that. Pay a few £100 and go to a surveyor and get a probate valuation. So that's down here. A probate valuation tends to be lower. And if you have to pay tax on it, you don't want what some estate agent thinks it's going to sell for. You want a true value at the date of death. The probate valuation, the best tip I was given, it is a very different valuation, and it helped us to minimize the tax that we had to pay on the estate. And also, I'm just going to throw this in here as a cautionary tale. Mortgage lenders are not nice people. They can be very difficult and incredibly unreasonable. I had to deal with two issues for my aunt. One, they actually tried to repossess her property. Can you believe that? And I had to fight off a repossession because of issues around the mortgage. And also, shortly after granting probate, I personally, as an executor, was put under a huge amount of pressure in respect of a buy-to-let property. Why? Because the mortgage was redeemable on the death of my uncle. So they then proceeded to call me every week to find out how I was getting on with selling the property and repaying the mortgage. Here are some useful resources for you. So if you watch this on replay, do take a snapshot of all of these. This little book was fantastic. It cost $9.99. It was fantastic. It was a great guide, brilliant, really easily written, really fantastic. You can see it's well tabbed. I found this one very good. There are many on the market, but this is one that I used. Here are some other useful resources. If you want a solicitor, go look them up at our official registry at the Law Society. Find a solicitor. If you're interested in solicitors who specifically deal with the elderly, this is a website for them. This is the government website applying for probate. Age UK, brilliant for the benefits calculator. Inheritance tax, there's a lot on inheritance tax, but I'm going to tell you it's a really complex area. It's not easy. And even though the individual might have passed away, the government still consider that their estate continues. So actually, because my uncle had some rental property, we still have to declare tax returns for him. Can you believe it? We still do tax returns for his estate. And if in doubt, there's a huge amount of information out there, so do Google. The conference can help for those who are Adventists who are watching. The conference can help. There is a South England Conference Wills and Trust Department, and they may well be able to help you with your will. I know in times gone by, we used to have a chap come down from the conference to church. I don't think that happened. In fact, I know that doesn't happen anymore. And I'm also aware that I think this department is currently closed at the moment because of COVID. But you do reach out to them when they reopen, if they reopen. And do consider leaving a gift to the church in your will. It's a very tax efficient thing to do. Keeps it out of the hands of the taxman and keeps it with the organizations that we love and care for. As I mentioned at the beginning, I don't do this area of law. I've answered many questions over the years with people, but I actually think that it's better now to have a local contact. I know David Frederick from when I was chair of the local Chamber of Commerce. He's a really, really nice guy. He's a Christian, he's friendly, and he's Grenadian. He's a lovely, lovely guy, very well-known local professional. He's primarily an accountant, but he's also a certified probate professional. So I've reached out to him. I've had a chat with him. He knows about you. He knows certain people in his church. He's brilliant. He's such a good guy. And if you mention my name, you'll get a 10% discount on fees. So do remember to mention my name. He's currently, he's got quite a lot of professional titles, but he is currently president of the Association of Accounting Technicians. These are his details, so you can find him. He's in West Dulwich. He's a very, very nice chap. He's available. He's on WhatsApp. He's on phone. He's via email. So if you don't, obviously you're entitled to go anywhere you like. But I know David, and he's a really nice guy, and he's a great Christian as well. So that's the end of the main part of my presentation. I haven't said much about me, but anyone who knew my mom would know that my mom would have talked about me for the last 45 minutes. So just in honor of her, I'm going to tell you a bit about me. I'm a corporate commercial solicitor. I tend to work in-house for big engineering companies. I'm also a charity board trustee. I'm an advisory board member for Halsbury's Laws of England. I do senior level recruitment, doing public appointments for the Ministry of Justice. I sit on there as an independent panel member for them. I'm also a public appointee in my own right, and I recruit magistrates. So if anybody is interested in any of these areas, maybe becoming a non-exec director, or if there are any young people who are interested in becoming a solicitor or interested in going into the law, or if you're interested in public appointments, please let Pastor know, and I'll do a separate Zoom or a separate presentation on that. I'm still connected with Croydon Church, as one friend who is listening to this said, you can run, but you can't hide. I'll always be very closely connected with Croydon Church, but I do go to all the Croydon churches. I'm a current member of Croydon SDA Gospel Choir, and I'm a former church choir director and pianist. And last but not least, I'm very proud daughter of the late Ethelyn Toyloy, Sister Toyloy, who died last year. She's wonderful. So that's it, everyone. Questions? Last set of questions.
Okay, thank you. The question here is, if someone dies intestate, who pays the inheritance tax?
Somebody will need to step in and take over that estate. So when we looked at, you're looking for a grant of letters of administration, somebody will need to step in. So whoever decides to do that, whether it be a spouse or a partner or a child, a grandparent, there's this long list that you need to clear off. When they step in and they get the grant of letters of administration, then it's the same thing. They need to declare everything for tax. Everything goes according to that diagram. So yeah, it will be either your executor, if you've got an executor, or it will be your administrator.
Thank you. Another question here is, do you need probate for a small estate?
No, you don't actually. That's a really, really good question. Thank you for asking that. If there's a property, you're going to need probate. But if there's no property, no, I don't want to be your executor. So if there's no property, and it's a very small amount of money, you don't actually need to go through probate. You may be able to approach the bank. I only found out after I got probate, actually, that for small sums, maybe £5,000-10,000, you don't need probate, but you will still need to demonstrate, who you are and why you think you're entitled, etc.
Thank you. If you write names of people on your will to inherit something and they die before you, what happens to their portion?
It fails. It just fails. So you could put redundancies in place to say, well, if they have passed away, then maybe their child or whatever you want it to be. You can be as descriptive as you like in your will, but basically if the person is not there, it fails, and that gift will fall into, remember, the residue. Okay.
Thank you. Is HMRC aware of how many bank accounts or shares, etc., that someone has? And can they tell you what hasn't been included for inheritance tax?
I have no idea. I don't work for HMRC. But what I would say is that there's a lot of big data going on. I don't really like it. Everything seems to be connected to everything these days. And with everything becoming much more joined up now, it wouldn't surprise me if they know. Big Brother's always watching you. So I don't know. But you can try it. I wouldn't do it, but you can try it.
Thank you. And the last question here is there a resource, book, or online that gives more detail about the role of an executor?
There's a lot of information online. There are a lot of really good books out there. Really, really good books. Use your community. Ask, engage a professional. But it's difficult. That little book that I recommended for £10. Fantastic, written in beautiful, simple English, And it really helped me. And, I'm a solicitor as well. So, but just because I'm a solicitor doesn't know that I know about this area. I followed it. It was really, really helpful. Amazon, and just read the reviews. But there are lots and lots. There's lots of guidance out there. Lots of guidance.
Thank you very much. And that was the last question. And Nicolina, we thank you very much for your presentation. It was very well presented and clear. And I'm sure that a lot of our online viewers appreciate what you have presented to us this afternoon. May God continue to bless you as you work in your work and as you minister in your talks and presentations that you do in the future.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. And I know the sensitive issues, but I'm a big believer in we work smarter, not harder. And I know that everybody's worked so hard for all the money that they earn and they have. Let's work smarter and just keep that money in our community rather than giving it to the tax man.
Thank you very much. Well, we will close with prayer. So let's just bow our heads. Dear, kind and eternal Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the presentation that has been shared with us. And we pray that the information given, we will take the advice on hand, O Lord. And we also pray that you'll continue to be with Nicolina as she works and as she gives presentations and talks in the future. And above all things, may your name, O Lord, be lifted up and glorified. For we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen.